From the first time I've made pots, from when I was a little kid, they've all been the same. They've never quite uniform. They've got an essence of wobbliness to them. They've got, you know, they're like me. The nose is a bit to the left and the ears are down a bit, and there's a bit of a twist to my eyes, I think, and got curly hair. So my pots are really a bit like me. No matter how hard I try to make them perfect and straight, they have that Chester sort of essence to them.
You can see an evolution in those forms if you trace them over the time that he's been making. But you can also see very typical Nealie-ness in his pots. So you can see what is a Nealie because there is the man in the pot.
I just make what I feel, and I make things with joy and feeling and thinking of friends and thinking of the animals and the birds, and I'm often laughing when I've finished making them, and they're very much people structures, like the little lugs on the arms. Some are like that, which is a boy feeling, and some are like that, which is a girl feeling. They're caricatures of the feelings people have. There's got to be emotion in them. They can't just be something straight and boring. If I'm not laughing or feeling something when I'm making, they don't have any life force. Righto, mate.
Well, we're here sitting at Goanna Ridge, which is the home of Chester Nealie, who is a New Zealand artist but has lived in Australia for many years. He originally moved here in 1991. This is a particularly beautiful part of the Australian bush in the central west of New South Wales, located between Gulgong and Mudgee. If you watch Chester at home, he's totally at one with this place.
How about a song?
And I think that you can really see some of those elements in the work that he creates.
When I came to Australia, I bought 250 acres of forest, what you call bush, and it's got the right kind of trees to build a house with, the right kind of trees to fire with wood, the dead trees I used to fire the kilns with, and the rocks to build for the walls of the house. So I've used all the natural elements around me to make my clays, to fire my kilns and build my house. I love the surface here. It's just like what I'll try to get on the pots. The darker the clay and the greens and the lime-coloured yellows. Some of the oldest living plants in the world, these lichens. They grow so slowly. So much inspiration in nature. I enjoy it immensely.
Typically of Chester, when we came to this valley and started to build, I think the kiln was in place before the building was. He'd found clay when he was a kid playing on the beach. Underneath a certain layer of sand, he talks about this porcelaneous clay that they used to pick up and make little birds' nests and eggs and things. So he's been in touch with the material for a long time.
I try and keep a pot out of every firing, and this is a typical glaze that I've chosen because it's a bit wayward. It's called a Shino glaze, which is a name of a Japanese glaze that's very simple. And the word Shino means it's the essence of spring, of the snow melting and the rich red earth showing underneath, and it's about growth and life and things. So this has been sitting on some shells, fired in the kiln, and the ashes landed on parts of it and melted, and sometimes I'll cover parts of the glaze with some wadding, which is sand and fire clay, and it gives you a window back into the beginning of the pot, the clay or the original glaze before the flames and the ashes got on it.
I think the simplicity of how it looks is underpinned by this vast knowledge. So while it looks simple and rustic, the alchemy, the intelligence, the knowledge that goes into what looks like a simple firing is 60 years of making and 60 years of learning that he's bringing with him.
I'm going to show you how I use shells to separate my pots from sticking to the kiln and the shelf. Break some scallop shells, and once I've got 3, I'll make them into a nice form. And when I'm putting them in the kiln, I'll get some wadding, which is, I've talked about as clay and sand, and I'll make them into a nice shape with a bit of a dent in the middle like that. And I like the ribs of the scallop shell to be upmost. And if this was a pot to go in the kiln, it'd sit on there, and when I fired it, it comes off and the scallop shell is left a nice pattern on the pot, and the pot doesn't stick. The flame is the master in the kiln, and you're trying to trap the markings of the flame on your work. And you make special glazes and clays that will leave the marks of the flame. In 1978, I went to Japan, and I was introduced to wood firing, and I saw these anagama kilns. They're narrow in the front, bigger in the middle, and taper to a small thing, and they always live up a slope. So this first firing that I did there, I filled it with my first pots to load, got all the wood cut and everything, and I thought, I can do this by myself. I'm a big boy, I know how to do this. So I lit the kiln and I fired, and I stayed awake for 48 hours, remembering I have to put wood in every 5 minutes. And I lay down on the grass just to rest my back. You know, I was okay, I'd be awake in a minute. I was woken up 3 hours later by rain on my face. The kiln had gone cold. It was not possible to start it again. When I unpacked it, I had 1 pot in there that was any good. Oh dear, I learnt that you can't fire them by yourself.
This is kind of civilised because Chester's pulled together a few of his mates and wood firing buddies to share in the round-the-clock firing. So it's 6 on, 6 off. It's relaxing. You know you're going to go to sleep and wake up and be ready. Yeah, so it's fun.
It's a very gentle bit of process, this.
Chester brings people together from all around the country to assist with the firings because it's such a physical and labour-intensive and long process.
And it's making the right noises.
But he also passes on his knowledge to younger generations of ceramic artists. And I think that that sense of community amongst ceramicists is really important.
When we fire this kiln, we start off very slowly. We only go up 50 degrees an hour for the first 12 hours. Very, very slowly. You can't put the wood in too quickly and have too much heat suddenly because the pots will break. The amount of carbon dioxide, or carbon monoxide really, is what changes your colour. So you've got to balance it without anything other than just using air. No fans, just the chimney drawing the air through and the amount of air that you let in at the front and compared with the amount of wood you put in.
Hour after hour, day after day.
Sometimes I get it wrong. Sometimes I get it right. This time's going to be a good firing.
As someone who makes useful vessels, and that's what Chester does, this is an example. Like Chester's drinking lips and his handles are practical, but visually they are generous, right? So there's a visual weight about them. There's a physical connection that is generous, right? But in the hands of somebody who is less knowing and less experienced and less aware of detail, such attributes on a form could be heavy and weighty. But there's nothing about Chester's work that's heavy and weighty to look at, both that practical and visual weight. I was instantly drawn to the wholesomeness and the generous qualities in his work.
With a wood firer, and Chester in particular,
They allow the alchemy of the elements of wood firing to act on the work. And so you can anticipate what might come, but there's always something that comes from the kiln itself.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Suze.
Wood firers talk of the gifts of the kiln. There's one type of pot that Chester makes that I have dubbed a camembert rind. There's a white, almost like a camembert mould across the surface of the pot that, to me, is quite delicious, and it speaks of deep age.
Let's see what we've got. Oh, that's not bad. Oh, there's good colour on that, good orange underneath. And you see the wadding and the shells that stop them from sticking together, I hope. They've been 2 days at 1,300 degrees Celsius. Pretty hot. You have to earn your respect from the kiln. You have to learn about different woods to fire, different clays to fire. There's a huge learning process. And it's exciting because the pots are unique. You can never duplicate them. Every single pot that comes out is unique in itself. Yay! That's a nice pot. It's exciting when you get a good one out of there. You can get quite carried away. And you can get a few dismal ones as well. But, you know, the highs and lows of life is what it's all about, isn't it? That's nice. See the kangaroo grass? It's a good wadding and it does that. Look at that. That's a great dish. Put a bit of smoked fish on there, eh? It's the shape of the South Island of New Zealand, you see. Of all the different art disciplines, there are more variables in wood firing than anything else. You're not just, each clay is different, each wood you use is different. Any glazes or surfaces you put on it give you different. See, you've got a myriad of possibilities. It's a pretty big game of three-dimensional chess. It's fun, it keeps you. I've been hanging on doing this for over 50 years, since 1964, so every now and then I think, oh God, do I have to keep doing this? But there's always a new invention, a new idea.
You just hold one of his pots and you can feel the essence of the artist and all of the knowledge and all of those connections that he brings with him into what he makes.